Well, welcome everybody. We will call our meeting, we'll get our meeting started. We're going to start with an invocation, which we observe by a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Corliss.
Here.
Halliburton.
Here.
Morales.
Here.
Nash.
Here.
Stead.
Here.
Willits.
Here.
All present.
We've got minutes for approval from March 5th.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of the minutes of the work session and regular meetings of March 5th, 2024.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Clerk?
Corliss.
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
Morales.
Yes.
Nash.
Yes.
Stead.
Yes.
Willits. Yes. All in favor, motion carries.
And now under special business, do we have Tom Brown with us? Is Mr. Brown online? Oh, hi, Jamie. All right.
Madam Mayor.
Well, we have before us, I'm putting before you the reappointment of Tom Brown to the Board of Electrical Appeal for a four-year term ending March 2028. As you see, it's a reappointment. I really appreciate that Mr. Brown was willing to re-up for another 4 years.
Madam Mayor, I ask unanimous consent of the reappointment of Tom Brown to the Board of Electrical Appeal for a 4-year term ending March of 2028.
Without objection. Thank you so much, Mr. Brown, for your service. Appreciate it. And now we'll move to the consent agenda.
Madam Mayor, I ask that RES-133-24 and RES-134-24 be removed from the consent agenda for separate consideration.
Without objection.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of the remainder of the consent agenda.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Clerk, will you call the roll?
Corliss.
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
Morales.
Yes.
Nash.
Yes.
Stead.
Yes.
Willits. Yes. All in favor, motion carries.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of RES-133-24.
Second. Great.
Madam Mayor, this is the resolution approving the agreement for the award of the sourcing for the library's facilities master plan. Just a couple comments on that, and there might be some others from council members. We're excited for this, and we previously approved took action on this in February. We're excited for this to come before council. I think the feeling was reading through the contract that given the amount of public outreach that they're doing, it looks like there'll be a few community advisory events, one listening session, one appearance before council and before the library board, and one public survey that this could, we'd like to see this work be done by the end of the year if possible, recognizing that the contract is for a full 12 months. But there may be further comments from council members on that.
Great, thanks.
Council President Nash, Madam Mayor, as President Nash spoke, I'm so excited to see this contract come before us, and we took action back in February. It looks like they have a very well-defined plan that we're moving forward with. Considering the timeline and our budgets, I'm concerned if we get a report next February, if there's any questions or concerns, we may end up pushing any type of action into fiscal 27. So I would just strongly urge our contractor to see what they can do to have a full report to us within maybe a 9-month period in November. That would be so that we have time to review it, take questions, and any time for considerations of modification. Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yeah.
This is an exciting day. We've taken a while to get to this date, and it's great. It's going to be a 20-year plan, and that is no small task. I appreciate that we have a very highly qualified contractor to do this work. and I look forward to the work. Just a couple of statements. The more public outreach, the better, and the sooner the better in terms of getting this within the budget cycle. My concern is that if it takes the full 12 months, it might be difficult for us to have enough information to then put it in next year's budget. So would like to see it done as soon as possible. Thank you.
All right, clerk, will you call the roll?
Corliss,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
Morales,
Yes.
Nash,
Yes.
Stead,
Yes.
Willetts.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of RES 134-24.
Second.
This is the resolution approving a subaward agreement between the city of Boise and Interfaith Sanctuary. This is to continue the non-congregate shelter at the hotel. We had a robust discussion about this during work session. I think the general feeling is that we are supportive of keeping this vulnerable population housed. It's my understanding there's about 45 children currently relying on these services, as well as a few dozen medically fragile individuals. That being said, this council is committed to long-term solutions, as has previous councils, and under your leadership, we're going to be seeing those permanent solutions come online in the next couple of years. I think what we'd probably like to see in the next month or two would probably be a work session with staff, with Maureen Brewer, to understand Our Path Home and what their needs would be related to winding down a program like this, to make responsibly, to understand exactly what resources and timeline that Our Path Home would need to help the individuals that are housed there. There might be further comments, but I think that was the gist of the sentiment expressed during work session.
Madam Mayor, I might add just a couple more comments. One being that I'm really, really proud of the city's work to invest in permanent supportive housing. I'm really excited to see some of the projects that we've approved come on board, both in the next year and in the next year and a half. It's going to be a tight timeline. Some of those things coming on board with this contract coming to an end next year. And so I anticipate there being a chance that a similar item comes in front of us in the future. And I guess that my goal and my hope that we would be working with all of our different partners, our Path Home partners, and our folks who are working to end homelessness, to figure out if we can have a more permanent solution by the time that this comes around again next year. I don't know if it's possible or not, but I know that investing in our people in a place where, you know, they can stay in a dignified way, that's a permanent solution, is better than us continuing to approve funds again and again and again. And I guess what I would call on is not only our staff to, you know, explore those different opportunities, but for our nonprofit partners to be working with them to do that, and our nonprofit partners to be working responsibly to make sure that the places that we do have available for people to stay, that we're really running them in a way that works for these vulnerable populations who are having to stay at the hotel right now. So it's going to take creative solutions, but I hope that we aren't approving funds for this again in the future. It's needed this time around. It was needed last time around. And I think a permanent solution and exploring how we could use those funds to find it would be a better day for everybody.
Madam Mayor, this is going to pass council today, and we've been presented Sophie's choice. The only option presented to us was to approve the contract, or there are human consequences. And there's no plan if the contract isn't approved, and it didn't need to be that way. I feel I have an obligation to offer a different opinion. 13 months ago, the council approved $700,000 as a stopgap, and today the council will approve close to $2.3 million. That's 3 times the amount. There was an opportunity to do better. The city knew this was coming. The hotel contract wasn't bid. There wasn't a plan presented to council to avoid paying for a hotel. There wasn't an option given to us about how to use these federal funds differently, and we just weren't given options. And there's no guarantee that we won't be here for this ask a year from now. And this was unavoidable, or this was avoidable, I should say. And I'm going to vote no.
Madam Mayor, if I could just offer a few more comments. I think it was clearly expressed to us during work session by Maureen Brewer that there are ways to responsibly wind down this program, that those they'd like a dialogue with us to consider those options. I understand the frustration that permanent solutions are not available today, but the financing that comes along with this, I mean, it's a very complicated sequencing. When it comes to these federal funds, you can only do one program a year. Each program that we bring online will not have, it needs to have a certain number of homes. It needs to address a certain population. And I have confidence that the city is doing all it can to bring these permanent solutions online quickly. It may not be quick enough to meet our immediate needs, but I'm confident that council and under your leadership will get there soon.
Clerk, will you call the roll?
Corliss,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Morales,
Yes.
Nash.
Yes.
Stead,
Yes.
Willetts.
No.
5 in favor, 1 opposed, motion carries.
All right, we are now in ordinances. It looks like there's one on second reading.
Madam Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that all ordinances on second reading be read by number and title only and filed for the third reading calendar.
Without objection.
ORD eight 24 and ordinance CAR 22 00033 for property located at 703 Americana Boulevard, amending zoning classifications of the city of Boise City to change the classification of real property particularly described in section 1 of this ordinance and adjacent rights of way from MX-5 to MX-5DA, setting forth a reasoned statement in support of such zone change and providing an effective date.
Thank you. And so now we're going to move into the public hearing portion of the evening. This is one where we sit as Boise, the Board of Corrections, to hear corrections on or requested corrections on levies that are assessed for the operation and maintenance of our irrigation system. Welcome.
Correct. Thank you. Madam Mayor, members of City Council, good evening. Good to see you again. My name is John Gunnarsson. I'm with Public Works. The city of Boise operates and maintains 7 pressure irrigation systems that equates to 14 subdivisions, about 375 lots. All of these are located in West Boise, kind of over near Fairview and 5 Mile area. In addition to these 7 pressure irrigation systems, the city has also recently incorporated 1 gravity lateral that delivers irrigation water to an additional 29 properties, also in West Boise. So we're here tonight, per state code. The city council sits and acts as the board of directors of the municipal irrigation district. Tonight, you are sitting as the board of directors to allow any property owners an opportunity to dispute their assessment and correct any errors in the assessment. For context, this year, for water year 2024, the assessment rate is remaining unchanged at $935 per acre. The last rate change that we had was in 2018. And in addition, with this new lateral that we have incorporated, there is a second assessment rate for those water users of $60 per lot to be using this gravity lateral. All assessments were mailed out in late February. There were a few errors made in the assessments we sent out to these newly incorporated gravity lateral users, but those have since been corrected. Staff is not aware of any other errors in the assessment. So next, with your permission, the floor should be opened up to anyone who feels there has been an error in their assessment. If no one is here to report any errors in their assessment, it is recommended you formally note that no corrections are needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you all here for this? Didn't think so. All right. Is anybody online?
We have a couple of members online, Madam Mayor, but no one with their hand raised.
Right. Will you raise your online hand if you were here to request a correction?
No one raised their hand, Madam Mayor.
All right. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing and point out that nobody was here to request a correction.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then we don't have to make any motions because we didn't hear anything.
Madam Mayor, I was disappointed to see that we weren't considering any pardons or paroles. I thought that when I saw Board of Corrections, that's what I expected. So.
You all got excited. All right. You have a couple people in mind? The next item, the applicant has requested a deferral to April 9th, so why don't we take a motion to memorialize that?
Madam Mayor, per request from the applicant, I move we defer SUB 23-00061 McPherson subdivision, Park subdivision to a date certain of April 9th, 2024.
Second.
We have a motion, a second, clerk?
Corliss,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
Morales,
yes,
Nash.
Yes.
Stead.
Yes.
Willetts.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
And while we're doing deferrals, item 4 did not meet sign posting requirements, so we need to have a motion to defer that to April 2nd.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of SUB 23-00063 preliminary plat for Fire Rail subdivision located at 4600 Apple
Nope,
Street.
sorry. The one below that.
My apologies, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, due to a noticing issue, I move that we defer the appeal of CVA 23-00024 to a date certain of April 2nd, 2024.
Second.
We have a motion, a second, clerk?
Corliss,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Morales,
yes,
Nash,
Yes.
Stead,
Yes.
Willetts.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
All right. We got the fire rail subdivision. I imagine that's what you're here for. Great. We've got Jesse Lyle. Jesse, welcome. I'm here to give the city's report. Is the neighborhood association online?
Madam Mayor, I do not see the neighborhood
All right.
association.
Is anybody here to testify on this beyond the applicant team? Wonderful. After we hear from staff, I'll ask if you're in agreement with terms and conditions and we'll take it from there. Legacy zoning go.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council. The item before you is SUB 2363. This is a preliminary plat for 1 common and 10 buildable lots located at 4600 Apple Street on approximately 37 acres in an M1D zone. And as a reminder, this application is being evaluated under the Legacy Zoning Code. The applicant is proposing to maintain the existing access point on Apple Street and construct Fire Rail Street as a private gated road. While private streets are usually discouraged, there is no potential for cross-access or street extensions to the north or east due to the railroad and to the south due to the quarry. ACHD has also conditioned this road to be private. The applicant was not proposing any sidewalks or other pedestrian facilities along this private street, and a condition of approval number 2 of the project report required a minimum 5-foot sidewalk and along the approximately 2,000 foot long road. While the subdivision design standards do not require curb gutter and sidewalk for private roads and industrial subdivisions, this can be required by the city council, and the comprehensive plan does encourage greater pedestrian connectivity. Additionally, any subsequent development will require sidewalks during design review approval. The majority of the discussion at the planning and zoning meeting concerned the necessity of pedestrian and bike facilities in the industrial subdivision. While there are no pedestrian facilities existing along Apple Street, there is a bikeway along Federal Way that is approximately 1,100 feet from the proposed subdivision, and there are residential uses to the north and east. Much of the discussion centered on providing future employees of the subdivision safe ways to commute by bicycle rather than by car. Ultimately, the commission noted that requiring a complete bicycle network with a subdivision application was more beneficial than waiting for each parcel to develop independently, and modified the original sidewalk condition as shown on the screen. Finally, the applicant is proposing to retain and protect the 5 existing trees on site north of the access point on Apple Street. There are also 4 additional trees on the south side of the road adjacent to the property that act as a landscape buffer. The development code does require landscape buffers along all streets, and the applicant is proposing to provide the required 57 trees as required by the code. And in conclusion, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommends approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Okay, so I have a question for Jesse. I have a couple questions actually. So why does the city, can you explain to me why it's beneficial to have a private road in this instance? Just so I better understand why that decision was made.
Absolutely. Madam Mayor, council members, if you look at the arrow map on the screen, so there is a railroad to the north and the east that precludes any connectivity to any other road extension. And then the south is a quarry that also doesn't really provide any potential connection. So that was the assessment made by ACHD and the city agreed.
Thank you. I guess the next question is for the applicant, so I can wait.
All right, come on up. I'll ask if you're in agreement with the terms and conditions, and then it sounds like we've got some questions.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We are in agreement with everything except for one specific
Okay,
site-specific condition. I think Jesse's gonna have a little presentation pulled up for me.
you've got a clicker there that you'll be able to use once it's pulled up.
Awesome.
It did not appear to copy onto my flash drive. Do you have another copy
I
with
do.
you?
Yeah. Yep. Thank you, Madam Mayor, council members. Thank you again to Jesse. I think she did a great job in helping us through this application. First off, this is an industrial subdivision that we're applying for here, preliminary plat, and then eventually the final plat with the private road. This is just an overall, aerial photo that shows the site. As Jesse had mentioned, this is an industrial area surrounding the site. We have the railroad, we have other industrial uses, and the comp plan and the zoning definitely aligns with this, and it shows that this is going to be an industrial area in the future, and the zoning does reflect that. And so the preliminary plat here that you see is going to be a 10-lot subdivision with the private road lot. We have an existing user on the site, which is the BME fire trucks. They are a wildland fire truck manufacturer, and the buildings that you see there will be maintained and continue to be used for industrial, purposes. Originally, we had more lots that were going to be as part of this preliminary plat, but the property owner decided to consolidate those and keep those southern buildings there fully within that larger lot 10. Let's see here, I'll fast forward. I'll just cut at the chase here. We had a discussion about, with planning and zoning about this as well. Originally, we had a recommended condition by staff to include sidewalks on both sides of the private road for the length of the private road. The property owner was just not in agreement to this, being that this is a industrial subdivision. As you can see here, we have a private entrance, private gate that's going to be there. It's going to be, there's going to be a security guard as well. And so this, industrial subdivision just does not warrant sidewalks, nor does it warrant pathways, as there's very few pedestrian users, bicyclists utilizing the site. And currently there's over 200 employees that work at BME. And speaking with the property owner, there's just very few users, if any, that bike to work or walk to work. And ACHD, if it was going to be required to have some sort of improvements on Apple Street, I could see that maybe sidewalks would be warranted going down the private road. But even ACHD, they don't see there to be any kind of improvements required along Apple Street in their 5-year work plan or their CIP plan. And like Jesse noted, we're about 1,100 or so feet away from the nearest sidewalks to the north on Federal Way. And then I have some pictures here that just show kind of the conditions of the site. So this is the entrance looking towards the proposed subdivision as you would enter. Like I mentioned, there's a gate there and there will be a security guard. And there's an overhead view too, showing the surrounding properties. So just to the west, you have some more industrial users actually utilize some semi trucks there as they're screening for the site. But I'll forward here. There's a railroad just down the street that crosses the street. It's just not a safe area, to be honest, to bike or really walk to the site. And then if I go forward here, here's that overall site, as you can see, like the aerial view. There's going to be many semi trucks coming through here, turning around. Even having an extruded curb will be, it'll be difficult for semis to navigate the site. It's just not a safe area for pedestrians to be walking about, bicyclists and so forth. And for that reason, we would like to recommend that you remove that condition of approval that requires any kind of pathway or sidewalk.
Madam Mayor, I had a question.
Mhm.
Is the condition for just sidewalks on Apple Street or on the private road as well?
So this is specific to the private road itself. Internal to the site, it says the applicant shall install an extruded curb to define a 10-foot bidirectional travel way for walkers and bicyclists the length of the private road. So ACHD is not requiring any improvements on the public roadway of Apple Street. It's, and they're not requiring the private road improvements either. It's the city is requesting the sidewalks, and then planning and zoning ended on this bidirectional travel way.
And within this subdivision, do you have, how many lots do you plan, or parcels do you plan on dividing?
Yeah, so there will be 10 total buildable lots with the one common lot that'll include the private road. So you see the largest lot there being lot 10 to the kind of the southwest part of the site. That will include the existing buildings that BME utilizes for their manufacturing.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
So I know that the commission conditioned the 10-foot path, thinking that that would be a cost savings for you as opposed to the 2 5-foot paths. Would you prefer the 2 5-foot paths over the 10-foot?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Steed, no, I mean, to be honest, the sidewalk would be definitely more, it'd be more of a cost to the property owner. So the extruded curb is less costly to just have the pavement there with the extruded curb. But like I mentioned, we would really like neither of those options. We would like to just move forward with the private road.
Madam Mayor. So just to be clear, ACHD, they said that there was no plans for any sidewalks in the future along Apple Street if there was any other development.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, no, ACHD in their 5-year work plan and their CIP does not show any sidewalks or any improvements to be done along Apple Street. I can defer to staff and see if they had any conversations with ACHD.
Yeah, if you
No,
could.
I'll just, what I'd say is that ultimately, if there's redevelopment that occurs along the street, it's up to it's the council's purview as to whether or not you require sidewalks when there's redevelopment on the lot. So ACHD not having it in the 5-year CIP does not mean that you all would not choose to require sidewalks, and the modern zoning code likely does along the public street.
Yeah, and Madam Mayor, I guess, sort of following up with staff there, I think the reason why we aren't requesting sidewalks along Apple Street on this application is because you actually don't own the land. It's a separate lot, correct?
That is correct. Yeah.
Yep. And I guess the question for staff would be if it's all right to do it right now, if we were approving a lot that was along that road, my understanding of our zoning code is that we would be requiring a sidewalk along that stretch.
Madam Mayor, council members, that's correct. There is only a short part of this parcel, as you can see on the screen, that does connect with Apple Street, and that's where the roadway connection starts. So there's not a whole lot of area for improvement. However, if there's any other improvement along Apple Street for any other subdivision or any other application, there would be sidewalk requirements.
Great, thank you. And then I guess one more question for the applicant, and this is just more based off curiosity than anything else. there's a crazy amount of weird railroad tracks that run all over the place in there. Are you going to be using any of those? Will those factor into any future development, or is that kind of getting, pulled out and not really associated with rail anymore?
Yeah, Councilmember Halliburton, yes, so that rail line is a unique part of this site, and future users will be able to utilize that rail line, and it's going to be maintained. So, that does make this industrial subdivision definitely profitable for future users to utilize that rail line, and it will be maintained. It's currently utilized by BME, and hence why it's fire rail subdivision. So that
Yep.
will be maintained.
That's great. I mean, it's a really unique lot that it has that
Yeah.
many tracks around there, and, hopefully a really great asset to being along the rail.
Mhm.
That's all I've got for the applicant.
Madam Mayor, one question for staff. With our new modern zoning code, with the development further along this road, saying we will be requiring sidewalk, pardon me, will council have a decision to waive that?
Madam Mayor, council members, first, I would just like to point out that this specific subdivision is being evaluated under the legacy zoning code. And so right now, the purview that we're looking at is that sidewalk can be required by council for this private road. Any subsequent application for this subdivision would be under the modern zoning code and would have to go through design review, which would require sidewalk adjacent to that site. And then any other development would also be subject to the modern zoning code with the sidewalk requirements.
Madam Mayor, I'll maybe add for that I know that ACHD very often doesn't install sidewalks where there are no sidewalks, but the way that we in the city typically get sidewalks are by requiring them of new development. So although it's not on the purview of ACHD right now to put sidewalks on Apple, I think it's very likely that the city would require that of developments moving forward, as Jesse indicated, so that ultimately there will be sidewalks on Apple. So I think that, again, as has been mentioned, I don't think that ACHD having it on their plan plays into the city's decision about whether we require sidewalks or not.
All right, I'm gonna see if, oh, sorry, Jordan.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, thank you. Just a comment and then a quick question. I would say, having, passing this property all the time, this area is very underdeveloped. But that's not to say that people don't want to use alternative transportation methods. I know a particular gentleman in my neighborhood who biked to an industrial area for a position in an industrial complex that didn't have sidewalks to get there, but he biked there. I think that, when we think about what this whole area might look like in many, many years to come, there may be more connectivity. One of the questions I actually have about this site is for the applicant, is there any kind of fencing that would prevent individuals from maybe shortcutting across the tracks to grab some food at Maverick across the street? If you look at some of those lots that are to be developed, they're pretty close to a convenience store there for a lunch break. I'm just curious if that's something that may happen, if it's possible to happen. And, if there's any concerns there, or what kinds of pedestrian pathways we could look at for making that connection to this park a little bit closer for those employees.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Morales, so currently there is a fence that is along the railroad there. So yeah, there's not an option to jump the tracks. I don't think it's, the property owner's interest to have that pedestrian crossway in the future either, just for safety reasons. Yeah, that's as much as I can give you right now.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Great, thank you. I'm gonna ask if anybody else is here to testify on this. So, as the applicant, are you part of the applicant team?
Okay. He's the
Okay.
property owner.
Sure. Have we been timing? All right. We can either do it in wrap up or you can do it now. All right, why don't we consider it wrap up? Are there any further questions? Wait, anybody else not part of the applicant team here to testify on this? I know it seems silly I'm asking because I'm just staring at the four of you, but like there might be somebody online. Nope. All right. I'm going to have the record reflect nobody else is here to testify. So we're going to go ahead and move into first questions for staff.
Yeah, I just
And then the reason I'm doing this is because then you'll be able to address some of those questions as well in your wrap up. Okay.
Yeah, I had one question for staff. The 10-foot pathway, was that condition part of the subdivision application or a prior application? How old's that condition?
Madam Mayor, council members, the original condition for the subdivision was for the sidewalks on either side. The 10-foot pathway was a modification of that condition by the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Okay.
Did you have something?
Madam Mayor, I have a comment, but I don't know if this is appropriate
Nope.
time.
During deliberation.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I have a question.
Yes.
Thank you. I was going to have you bring up the map. What I need clarification on is, I understand what's required now under the legacy zoning code. What I'm trying to figure out is what is potential with the new zoning code so that we don't have sidewalks to nowhere or no sidewalks at all. Could you walk us through just this perimeter about, because there's a private road involved as well.
So, and to be clear, the question is not about this application now, but about what will be around it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
In the future.
Sure, Madam Mayor, council members. So in the modern zoning code, any development that would come in would require sidewalks. I believe off the top of my head that Apple is a collector. So if anything would come in off of Apple Street, that would require detached sidewalks, 10-foot wide detached sidewalks with an 8-foot landscape buffer as a general rule. And then for this subdivision, any subsequent application would be required by design review to provide sidewalks as well. That would be on an individual basis by lot, which is why the commission wanted to put the pathway in at one time, so there wouldn't be a lack of connection in the interim.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. We'll go ahead and have you all wrap up.
Yeah, and Chad can come up here and, and state some. I just wanted to, for clarity's sake too, mention that, the extruded curb with the 10-foot pathway that planning and zoning had mentioned, as a possible solution of your condition. There's going to be some difficulties with that 10-foot wide, pathway as well. And being that there's potential for cars to drive, 10 feet wide is quite wide. So could be potential cars driving down there. With the extruded curb too, there's potential for semi trucks to often hit that as they're going into their site. If we put that in now as well, with future access points for, potential future industrial users, their access point might have to move based on their how they use their site if they were to buy 1 or 2 lots. So if we were to put in an extruded curb now and have cuts for it, potentially in the future, they would have to come back, take that out, and then repave. So that was another thought as to why it could be advantageous to just wait as future property owners come forth and have their own design review applications. So Chad, if you wanted to add anything additional.
My name's Chad Moffett. I'm actually the owner, but Madam Mayor and Council, I just want to make sure you guys understand what the property is utilized for. So it has a perimeter fencing that's about, I think, 6 or 8 foot high that goes, and that actually has barbed wire around the top of it, so you can't get in and out of the facility. As you come in, there's a security gate. As you enter off of the main street, there's a security gate there that's shut from basically 6 p.m. until 6 a.m. the following day. As you drive through that, the first thing you can't enter our facility unless you actually go to the security shack, which is another gate there, and you have to be cleared to actually go into the facility as far as being able to drive through the gates. So and the reason we do that is there's a lot of metal laying around. There's a lot of parts laying around. There's a lot of different functions laying around. So we don't really want people walking all over. There are semis that drive in and around there. So we have designated walkways that are painted, and people stay on those. The reason that we have them painted is because as you can tell by the size of the property, is considerably large. And when it snows, we have to remove the snow, especially in those walkways, so that people can walk. And if there's curb and gutter, it makes that extremely difficult. And it makes it difficult for semis to turn around and to move. You would not want to drive a bicycle back there. And the reason being is I don't even take my car back there 90% of the time, because you can get a flat tire pretty easy in a car, let alone in a bike. I mean, it's an industrial site. I just want to make sure everybody understands that. It's securitized. We don't let people back in there. The only way you can come on the side is you have to have safety glasses on. You have to have the proper boots and equipment on. It's not like people just come in to go have a picnic back in the back of the property. It just doesn't work that way. Even the people that buy the new subdivision, they will have, if they allow people to come in, they will drive into their areas, and then they will have their own dedicated areas. And please understand, most of the people that are doing this, we are running a railway along the backside of the property. Most of the people that would like to utilize this property are going to be bringing in semis so that they can unload cement, lumber materials, different things like that, that they'll bring off of rail cars, and they're unloading and then carrying it out on semis. So it is really going to be utilized as an industrial zone. I want to make sure that everybody understands too what's around us. Across the street, like he said, the individual across from us basically uses for his fence semis. Up the street from us is CNA Construction, who does an asphalt company. So they have semis running up and down that street all the time. If you want to take your life in your hands, you could ride your bike on that street, but I would not. Also, down the street from us is Yonke, who will probably never sell. The other one up the street is a storage unit facility. And then there's a trailer manufacturer or trailer sales company that's on the corner. So, I mean, the odds of this becoming a thoroughfare for people to bike and walk is probably slim to none. I just want to make sure you understand that. The odds of people getting on our property to just bike around are zero. I will tell you that right now. Our liability will not allow them to do that. We will not let people on the property just to go bike around. So, or walk around. We try to make sure they stay in designated walkways, because we can't maintain a whole entire facility for people to walk all over the place. So just want to give you guys a heads up on that. If you have any questions, I'm more than willing to answer them, but I want to make sure that everybody understood the use of this property. We manufacture fire trucks, and so they are, we're cutting huge pieces of metal and manufacturing and folding them. We have bodies that weigh tons. We don't let people around them very often. So,
Madam
Yeah,
Mayor,
and you guys moved from,
Morris,
yeah, I remember the
you've been to our
tour,
facility.
but into what used to be the
Motive
train
Power.
car maker,
Yep.
Motive Power. Yeah.
Yes.
Madam Mayor, question. There's a chance that you're not gonna get away with not doing anything as far as a sidewalk, whether it's 5 feet or 10 feet. Is it a difference to you if it's a 5-foot sidewalk? Is it the extruded curb? Is it the width of the sidewalk?
I just need to be able to maintain it, right? I mean, and so for me, having a painted area that people can walk on, I can plow it, I can put ice melt on it, I can fix it and move forward with it very quickly. If you have an extruded curb, I don't have equipment for that. So either I'm gonna have to find something that can plow that 10-foot wide. I'll be honest with you, people are gonna use it for their trucks. I mean, the one out here in front's only 3.5 feet wide, so I was kind of chuckling about 10-foot wide. I'm like, holy cow. So yeah, I mean, it's just easier for us in the way that we maintain, because we're using trucks with snow plows, basically cleaning stuff off. And then we have designated areas that are painted off that people can walk in that we call safe zones. And that's part of our safety plan that we utilize as a company. And so what'll happen too is as we implement this private road, people going down the private road will not even be able to access the BME side. There'll be a fence there. So our employees will all, I mean, even if you bike to our company right now, you stop at the security gate, you park your bike and you walk.
Yeah, and I'm going to just give you like maybe one more opportunity here. There's a strong chance that you're going to get required to have a sidewalk with a motion that comes here in a second. There's a chance that maybe you don't need the 10-foot one and a 5-foot one would be fine. I think what you're telling me is that you would rather have it on the street painted rather than separate from the
Absolutely.
street with a curb. There's probably also an opportunity where you have a sidewalk that's separated from the street and it doesn't have a curb as well. So there's different ways. I'm trying to figure out if there's a way that's acceptable for you to have a sidewalk. And I don't think that the concern is for people randomly getting through the gate and kind of riding around that area. I think it's for folks who may choose to want to ride their bike or walk or carpool or whatever they're going to do, to the site. So I'm trying to figure out if there's a workable solution for you that would get us there.
If you can find something that I can utilize without a curb that I can designate as a sidewalk, I'm fine with that. I just have to be able to clean it and keep it to where people can walk on it.
Great.
So.
Thank
yeah.
you.
Thank you. Any other questions? I'm assuming I'm good.
Madam Mayor, I do have a question for staff.
Thank you.
Thank you. So originally, condition number 2 was requiring a 5-foot sidewalk. Is that correct?
Madam Mayor, council members, that was correct. And it was not specified if it was attached or detached. We're going to leave that up to the applicant.
And in a situation, Madam Mayor, follow-up question. And in a situation where it's detached, we wouldn't necessarily have to mandate an extruded curb. It could be separated and the streetscape could go up to whatever the grass was or whatever the landscape barrier is. Or does there have to be an extruded curb in order for there to be a sidewalk separated or on street?
Madam Mayor, council members, one of the provisions that is allowed through council discretion about a private industrial road is to require or not require curb, gutter, and sidewalk. If you did not want to require that curb on that road, then I guess that would be up to your purview. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing.
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve SUB 23-63, but we change the condition back to the original condition that required a 5-foot sidewalk, and we can leave it open to the developer on how they want to put that sidewalk attached or detached. But we get rid of the additional condition from planning and zoning to make it 10 feet.
Second.
We have a motion and a second discussion.
Madam Mayor, I think that, one of the things I think that a 10-foot sidewalk would have been great. A multi-use path would have been great, and it would have made it a little bit easier to walk or ride a bike. I don't know that that's the thing that's going to change somebody walking or riding their bicycle to this particular facility. And I get that there's a unique need, that it's an industrial area. I also think that, when there's a statement that like you'd have to be crazy to ride your bike back there with all these industrial trucks, sort of all the more reason to make sure there's at least one option for people to walk or bike or be on a wheelchair, where there's maybe some situation where they're not having to share the road with a variety of things. I do want to make it as cheap and easy for you as possible and try to give you some of that flexibility of how that's going to look. But I don't think that we're going to approve a subdivision without having some sort of sidewalk that can connect to a sidewalk in another area.
Madam Mayor. I think Boise's great because we want a walkable, bikeable city for all. And however, I do believe that there are situations and places that we don't want people and we don't want to support people walking and biking. Gravel pits, landfill, this industrial zone. I would not want my kid to ride on this. I wouldn't want to ride on this. And I think it would create more of a hazardous situation. I don't see where having that curb, gutter, and sidewalk on that private road adds any value to the business or to Boise or to any resident here. And what it does is it burdens our developers with undue expense. In this situation, again, we do not want to support, in my opinion, biking and walking in this industrial area where there's a lot of semi-trucks. So I am in support of the applicant to have that condition removed.
Madam Mayor, I see it differently here. My law firm, oddly enough, is in an industrial zone because my boss is cheap and there was some cheap land there. And so I'm in between a bunch of construction and engineering firms. There happens to be a healthcare provider across the street. And we found the sidewalks in that industrial zone to be good for lunch breaks, and people really appreciate it there. I'm thinking about, I don't expect this to be used for public purposes. I do expect this to be used for private purposes of employees that will come into the industrial zone, as I've seen that used in the industrial zone that I work in. So that's why I'll be supporting the motion.
Hope your boss isn't listening.
I don't care. He knows it. He'd admit it.
Madam Mayor, I need clarification on the motion. So the motion is to remove the 10-foot condition, but to have a 5-foot condition that there still would be sidewalk.
The
required?
original condition, Madam Mayor, the original condition that staff put on was to have a 5-foot sidewalk, and staff left that open to the applicant on whether that would be attached or detached. I think making it easier for them. So the requirement would be the original condition of the 5-foot sidewalk, undefined whether it's attached or detached. That's up to the landowner.
Another question, Madam Mayor. So if is the 5-foot sidewalk required at all, or is that a condition? And that's what I need clarification.
The sidewalk would be required. So
No matter what,
So when this application was put forward originally,
Mm-hmm.
they didn't include a sidewalk in the design. Staff put a condition for a 5-foot sidewalk on the design. During the Planning and Zoning Commission, they decided that wasn't enough. They wanted to make that a 10-foot sidewalk with an extruded curb. I'm saying that that's probably overkill and a little bit too expensive. So we would just go back to the original staff recommendation of the 5-foot sidewalk.
and then Madam Mayor, at what point can we do a substitute motion, or do we have to vote on this motion before we can do subs?
You
Madam
have to
Mayor.
vote on a substitute motion. Before we do that, if that's what you're going to propose, that's fine. But Jordan's had his little Zoom hand up for a long time, so I don't want him to think that we don't see him. So what, I'd like to take his comments and then, yeah, clarification, and then I'll come back to you.
Madam Mayor, thank you. Council President Nash hit it on the head. I'm thinking about Boiseans for decades to come that will be working in this industrial park. And these are really important jobs, critical jobs, using heavy machinery, lots of dangerous materials, metal, whatnot. And I just think, who knows how long those shifts are. And, I think this is an important thing in our community to make sure that people can get outside and have connectivity and it's safe. And I think everything that we heard today just shares how much this is needed in these areas. And I expect that this will be needed throughout that entire area as it redevelops in the years to come.
Oh, no, you had.
Madam Mayor, I was just going to clarify. So and maybe we need staff to chime in on this because, so the way I understand the original condition was it was 2 5-foot sidewalks, one on either side. And the Planning and Zoning Commission thought that it would be more cost effective for the applicant to just do 1 10-foot sidewalk instead. So it's not necessarily simplifying the process for them. Because it would be 2 5-foot sidewalks as the original condition stated, if that's what we're reverting to.
Yeah, and Madam Mayor, I also think that it didn't include whether they had the extruded curb or whether they're separated on there. I do think it is important to have them on both sides because I do think that there's businesses on both sides that are going to have to cross from one side to the other, and that's how they would end up connecting to Apple Street.
Perfect.
All right,
Thank
great.
you for the
That's really the
clarification.
answer that you needed. All right, council member.
Madam Mayor, for a substitute motion?
So the process here is you actually have to make a motion requesting a substitute motion,
okay.
get a second and all the votes, and then if you get it, you can have a substitute motion.
All right, I'll try it. I'd like to make a substitute motion.
I'll second that motion.
All right, now we just vote on that. And what this means is if you vote for a substitute motion, you are allowing a motion beyond the first motion to come onto the table. Then you vote now. Yeah, if you want to vote on the first one. All right, clerk?
Corliss,
Yes.
Halliburton,
No.
Morales,
No.
Nash,
Yes.
Stead,
No.
Willetts.
Yes.
3 in favor, 3 opposed. Madam Mayor,
3. No.
motion fails.
An amended motion is possible. A substitute motion is not now, is where we're at. All right. Discussion?
Do you have any, I would ask if the motion makers for the substitute motion have any amendments they'd request of the motion maker.
Well, let's see how to do that. I think there's some of us that don't believe that sidewalk is appropriate for this particular property, given the explanation that was given. So I was hoping for an opportunity to have that discussion. But I think the current motion would not allow that because it has a definition. So,
Do you instead like to debate against the current motion?
well, yes, I guess I will debate. I, I think this needs to be approved. I have concerns about the sidewalk. I understand my fellow council members' desire to have a sidewalk, but you gave us a very good explanation about why that isn't a great idea. And I think it's going to cost extra development costs for something that is a gated industrial area that isn't walkable or bikeable. So I would like the subdivision to go forward. I just think that it is not a wise decision given the area to require the sidewalks.
Further discussion? No?
I
All right.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I don't know if this is possible. Can we make an amendment to modify for 1 5-foot section of sidewalk versus 2 5-foot sections of sidewalk?
For amended motions, what you do is you ask the maker of the motion if they are open to that amendment.
Madam Mayor, I appreciate the request and I appreciate the creativity and the dialogue and the debate. No, I'm not willing to change the motion, and I'll talk about why. There's a very similar gated community to Nifty National Forest Fire Center. You have to cross over the freeway to get there. It's actually a really kind of similar condition of riding your bike there. There's still people that do it every single day. And there's still trucks that are coming up and down every single day, sometimes in a really urgent fashion. And it's really important for those people that are riding their bike there or walking with their family to be able to hop on those sidewalks on either side of the road and get to where they need to go. We've got a application here where we've got businesses on both sides of the road. And we've heard sort of a statement earlier about how heavy the traffic is, how many trucks are going through, the different types of things that might be on the road. And I think that it's important that anybody who's working there, and hopefully it's like hundreds of employees, like hopefully that this is a big enough area that there's a lot of folks that are working there and probably some people who might choose to ride, and having them have to cross the street from one side of the street and dodging trucks to get onto a sidewalk to come or go for work or go on their lunch break or go to the Maverick that, Councilmember Morales was talking about earlier. I think that this is consistent with what we would actually require of any other subdivision, industrial, residential, or commercial. That consistency, I think, is important. I think it's, easier than doing the 10-foot path that was required earlier with the extruded curb. And so hopefully there is some cost savings there for the person. So I think this is the way to go.
Councilmember Morales.
Yeah, I wanted to point that out. I really think we're going to see hundreds of employees working in this park. And so when we start to think about that many people at that scale, there are going to be people that want to use this, not to get to work, but maybe just while at work. We also don't know future uses of these properties. Which of these properties may be picked up by similar industries where they're wanting to travel between each other. That's good for an industrial ecosystem that might be there, and I think we just have to consider that for the generations to come. And so I think considering the scale, the number of employees that hopefully will be able to call this place home for most of their day during the weekday, this will be a positive benefit for them.
All right, clerk, will you call the roll?
Corliss,
Yes, I'm in support of the appeal
No.
or the motion.
no.
No, I don't support the motion.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Morales,
Yes.
Nash,
Yes.
Stead,
Yes.
Willetts,
No.
4 in favor, 2 opposed, motion carries.
Great. Anything further? I'll take unanimous
Madam Mayor.
move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.